It's 5 minutes past 8. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, Mr. Chike Ogear joins us now, Commissioner for Information in Delta State. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Well, many eventually have now heard some governors lend their voice to this use of card readers for the elections, and it's out there now. And they wonder, look, why won't PDP give this a chance? Because they think, look, this will, of course, enhance the integrity of the elections, many think. And they just suspect, is there anything to this rejection or opposing use of card readers by the PDP?
Well, thank you for having me. The truth is that I find the whole narrative confusing because in one hand, for instance, I heard the last speaker talking from Abuja now, and he was saying, you asked the question, why is it, so your party is totally comfortable with everything about the card reader and all that? And he says, yes, we just want the elections to go on. We don't want any postponement. You see, but I think that is not the point. That is not the narrative. We are talking about an election, just like the governor of Akwa Ibom. I think he captured this best. He said, we're talking about an election that will have held in February, and the card reader is being tested in March. And yet, like you know, it was tested in just 12 states, 2 states per, geographical zone, and there was very, very low turnout. So what we saw at that mock trials is in no way reflective of what we're expecting to see for the elections. And I think the situation is simple. All people are saying, at least people in the PDP, like it is rightly said, Jega is an appointee of this president. He had the confidence on him before he appointed him at the time he was appointed. And all we are saying, let us leave personalities. I don't think, for me, this has nothing to do with Jega. This has to do with the preparedness of INec as an institution to conduct free and fair elections within the stipulated time and to avoid any kind of confusion. Because there were still issues with the card reader. That is the truth. Yes, we know that there are those issues where your thumb, even like when you go for your passports or whatever, and maybe if it was oily or those that goes to the farm, you might not get it printed. So you can imagine those kind of issues compounded with the issues of maybe the software malfunctioning in that card reader, and then you are having thousands of people in these polling booths, and you can imagine the kind of confusion that will create. I think that is more of the issue. It's not about whether elections will hold or whether Jega did this or whether, I think we should leave all that. That is not the issue. Like I rightly said, these elections were meant to have held on February the 14th. And we are still having this conversation now. Does that not show that there is a problem? You see, but we're all in this dilemma together. And I think as a nation, it's something we have to come out with the best solution to it. Because I'm not going to say, don't use the card reader. I think we've already gone too far for that in the day. But at the same time, you see, for instance, the last speaker was still being hopeful and optimistic about what will happen between now and the 28th.
But again, I think what we're getting wrong here, because I'm trying to look at what Gwanda Tone has sent. He said, well, in his state, some places votes have never been counted. So he would want to see a system as this. One thing we're getting wrong here is that the card reader is not for the voting proper.
Yes.
It's for the accreditation.
Yes.
So what's wrong if we have a system that will authenticate or validate my card as a valid voter in an election?
Yes.
Is there anything wrong in that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You see, I think the only thing that people are trying to avoid here, people that are raising issues about it, is what kind of confusion will that cause? You trying to, if for instance there are those voters on that day, the queue is from here to there, and people are trying to validate their cards, and this thing is not working. What happens next? You see, those are the issues. What happens next? And don't forget, we're not talking about a place where Chike, Chamberlain and Suleiman are sitting down. We're talking about a place where mass of people, some of them are not literate, some of them can't speak English, and everybody's on edge. Everybody wants to vote for their preferred party, because like you rightly said, what we want is free, fair, and credible elections. I'm sure that's what everybody wants, irrespective of who wins.
Because I'm thinking back now, I recall how the nation were on the same page to helping INec get a watertight process.
Yes.
And that was why that huge amount of money was given out to INec.
Yes.
And if we knew all along that we wouldn't be using a system like this,
Yes.
why didn't we say before we got close to this election?
Well, I don't know. You see, that is a question that you might ask INec, because if you ask me, I believe that where we are now, we should have been there 2 years ago. That is what we are saying. And we had all that time. What was the institution doing? Maybe there are facts that are not ordinarily within the purview of, the domain of
because
common
now
space.
because we're discussing this now, I'll rather put the questions before politicians, because
Yes.
when we thought the election was going to hold February 14,
Yes.
the issue of card reader never came up. No political party ever said anything about card reader.
So that begins to tell you what is happening.
No,
Are
it
you
begins
sure?
to tell you that the politicians in the country were up to something.
No,
Because
I don't think
if
so.
the card reader were an issue,
Let me
the
tell-
card reader, if it was an issue at that point in time,
Yes.
they would have raised that particular issue. Instead, we were talking about postponement of the election.
Let me tell you
and
something.
non-collection or non-provision of the PVC.
PVC, yes.
And every problem we sort out.
Yes.
We got to get a different thing from
Yes.
the political class.
Okay, let me tell you exactly how it goes. I work in the media space, and I think this again is part of the problem, the public enlightenment that went with this thing. I am assuring you that the average politician at that time did not even understand what that card reader was all about. And like you rightly said, because what was in front of them at that time was the provision of these PVCs.
In spite of
and
the
everybody
briefings,
knew.
but I thought INec said they were constantly briefing
Which,
political
I mean,
parties.
even I, yourself, those of us that have access to television, which is, I don't think is up to 15% of this country, how much of those briefings did we see? These are the issues, I'm telling you. Because you even need the radio. Look, I'm Commissioner for Information, and I tell you, the radio is a more mass appeal thing to our people. Half the time, you don't even have, the power to switch on the sites for those that have it anyway.